Week 2 is now in the books in the 2023 NAIA football season. We're going to talk about that and tell you about 5 of the top performances that took place this past weekend as well. Hi, I'm Joey McWilliams here on Midwest Sportsnet. I appreciate you stopping by, especially here on a Sunday night when Late Kick goes live on Sundays. If you haven't stopped and watched Josh Page's show, by the way, I have to tell you, if you like Division I football, that is the best thing out there. But if you like NAIA football, and hey, we happen to like both, you're going to enjoy being here tonight. Thanks for stopping by. Please let me know in the comment section from where you are watching on this Sunday night. And from what I hear, at least in my part of the country, it is supposed to not be as hot tomorrow. So that's welcome relief. And I have a lot to share with you tonight. There were some upsets, a couple that were bigger than others. There were some things that happened that we said last week likely would happen, and they did come about. And there is one person in the top 5 who's pretty much just taken up residence there. So we'll talk about him as we get to that point. I want to give a shout out, by the way. Let's put a couple of these on here. Hey, listen, Jeff says, hands down, this is number 1. So, Jeff, thank you very much. And I appreciate, by the way, as always, Jake coming in from East Wichita, not to be confused anywhere else in Wichita, East Wichita. I'd like to know, by the way, how close that is to friends to the campus there. And appreciate Dale from watching in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Thank you so much for all of you all watching tonight. Let's get right into it. Let's go beyond the 5 first, and then we will talk about the top 5 performances tonight. And there is a lot going on, so we'll just get right to it. I do want to say also for everyone watching tonight too, and for those who are picking up on the channel as well, we do try to get those top 5 performances and other things that are happening. We're not going to give you in-depth coverage of every single game from the NAI this weekend. There were a number of them. I think 46 at last count from this last weekend. However, we'll try to get a lot of the high points to you and tell you some of the fun things that happened. So there are some of those games, it's probably best if we just go ahead and leave them as they are. Just let it be, act like nothing ever happened. Point 20, Thomas 17. The Thomas Nighthawks played in their first ever official game, and it really did come down to the wire. Coach Michigan's squad really doing well, and it was 2017. They held point, by the way. The Thomas Nighthawks held point to just 10 yards rushing on the Saturday afternoon. Point comes away with a couple more field goals. 20-17, the final there. Mitchell Gossett for point. 18 of 28 passing, 267 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Great day for him. And it was the first win of the season for points. So point now 1-2 on the year. Southeastern, the Fire, even their record at 1-1 and even out Reinhardt's record at 1-1. 23-20 was the final. Southeastern was down 20-3 late in the second quarter and wanted to score the rest of the points in this game. A field goal with 1 second left in the first half, 17 points in the second half. Joel McGrath with 3 field goals for the day. So a big day for him. That name McGrath, Chase McGrath. Some of you all may remember him. He had a big field goal for the Tennessee Volunteers last year over Alabama. Just throwing that one out there. Kaiser finally gets a win in its series against Lindsey Wilson. Lindsey Wilson has won the 3 prior meetings in this series. The Seahawks come out on top, 30-26. Kaiser was up 30-6 in the fourth quarter, held off a Lindsey Wilson barrage of points, 20 unanswered. But Kaiser had enough to keep the Blue Raiders at bay. 236 yards passing on the day, 107 yards rushing on the day. But with all that much passing, there were no passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns for the Seahawks. By the way, 2 interceptions as well, even with all that. Jaden Meisinger, 19 carries for 52 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Bryce Beasley, the quarterback, 14 carries for 39 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns as well. And another thing about the Seahawks, they found their way to get to Ethan Cash. 4 sacks on the day for Kaiser on defense. So 30-26, the final. The Seahawks are now 1-1 as they get set to take on Valdosta State next week, because that's just the way Kaiser rolls. I mean, he's going to play this ridiculously tough schedule every single year. So at Valdosta State, we'll talk about that more later in the week. Bethel, the Wildcats dismantled St. Andrews 77-0. And we might have left this one just in the back burner, but Bethel had 2 pick sixes on the day. Darian Burns, the social media star, a 66-yard pick six. Javante Carter with one from 21 yards out. Mitchell Faulkner, 4 carries, 23 yards rushing. But he had 3 rushing touchdowns. So if you're going to get 23 yards rushing on a day and you put 18 points on the board, I think it's worth it. So good for him. Bethel, 77 points. They blank St. Andrews. Concordia, CUAA, 34. Olivet Nazarene, 28. Concordia came from behind, 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns, shut out the Tigers from that point. And here's how it gets there. I mean, Olivet just collapsed in the fourth quarter as there were 5 fumbles on the day, 3 in the fourth quarter. One of the fumble recoveries was taken back for a score. Of Concordia's 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns, one was a receiver-thrown touchdown, one was a fumble recovery, and one was thrown from Gavin Brooks. Of course, he had 3 on the day as well. So Brooks, 21 of 45, passing for 313 yards, 3 passing touchdowns through a pick also. Seeger DeGainer, get used to hearing that name again. 7 receptions, 119 yards receiving, 1 receiving touchdown, and he threw a touchdown as well. So a big day for Concordia there, the win over Olivet Nazarene. Morningside, 55, and Hastings, 18. So the Mustangs give the Broncos their first loss of the season, and Cash Parker and Lennox Brown both playing at quarterback on the day. Parker, and this is what we saw from Morningside last week, Parker moving the ball through the air, Brown moving the ball on the turf. Parker had 1 passing touchdown. Brown had 1 rushing touchdown. Morningside basically took care of business in this game, 55-18, the final score there. Concordia moves to 1-1 on the season. Another GPAC game, 27-23. Took down Jamestown as Jamestown shut down DJ McGarvey passing. McGarvey with 413 passing yards last week. So Concordia said Devin Ziegler can step up, and that is exactly what he did. 24 carries on the day, 124 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. By the way, McGarvey had a rushing touchdown, did not have a passing touchdown on the day. Dort over Mount Marty, 49-20. Dort 2-0 on the year, and the defenders have scored 49 points in both of their games so far, both wins. That just needed to be said. College of Idaho, 37. Montana Western, 35. And this was back and forth throughout the day. College of Idaho, Andy Peters, 23 of 39 passing, 35 passing yards, 2 touchdowns thrown, no picks on the day. One of those one of those receiving touchdowns went to John Schofield. He had 5 on the day for 94 yards, had 2 receiving touchdowns, 1 carry for 2 rushing yards. That also resulted in a touchdown as well. It was the Peters to Schofield 25-yard touchdown pass as time expired that allowed College of Idaho to come away with its 3rd victory on the season to go along with no losses. So College of Idaho 3-0 now on the year. Again, Peters to Schofield, 25 yards out as time expires, 37-35 the score. That was in Caldwell. Michael Palandri, though, had a good afternoon for Montana Western. The Bulldogs come up 2 points short. Palandri, another good afternoon, though, 16 of 24 passing, 244 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and no picks. We're getting to the top 5 here in just a little bit. We're going beyond the 5 right now, and we go to the big intersectional matchup of the day. St. Thomas travels across the Mississippi for the first time to take on someone, and they didn't just stop at the border. I mean, you can go across the Mississippi and you can wind up in St. Louis and go, well, here we are. That was not quite enough. They went all the way out to Montana to take on Carroll, and the Saints, I'm sure, were great hosts, but anyway, left them with a loss on the day. 26-23, both defenses making big plays in the fourth quarter as Carroll puts 17 points up in the fourth quarter, comes from behind, rallies 26-23. St. Thomas had the 23-16 lead midway through the fourth quarter, but a safety and a subsequent touchdown to follow that, and Carroll comes away with the victory. Jack Perka, 20 for 29 passing, 244 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick on the day. Friends over Avila, 54-20. Friends averaging better than 50 points a game through 3 contests, 3-0 on the season. The Falcons beat the Eagles for the first time in this series, which is now 5-1 in favor of Avila, but Friends comes away with the win here. Big game for Friends coming up. We'll talk about that later on in the week as well. But Friends is now 3-0 on the season, and I'm not sure, and we'll have to wait to see where this season goes. Are the Falcons ahead of schedule? They could be. We'll see where they are. Evangel also 3-0, and Evangel's defense held tough once again. The Valor gave up 7 points in week 1, 7 points in week 2, and decided that was 7 points too many this time. 55-0. They take down the Warriors from Sterling in this one. First ever meeting in this contest. And Jake, I'll come back to that. First ever meeting here in this contest between Evangel, the newcomer to the KCAC, and Sterling. The defense holding teams now to 4.7 points per game this year. Evangel with 4 passing touchdowns in the game, and then 4 rushing touchdowns in the game. R.J. Wakely, 14 of 25 passing, 271 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, had a pick. Dylan Hester, 7 receptions, 148 yards receiving, 3 receiving touchdowns for the Valor, who moved to 3-0. Let's go back to Friends for just a moment, because I did want to point this out and got going a little bit too fast there. Let's talk about the Falcons really quickly. I mentioned a little bit earlier, or actually last week, we talked about this. 500 yards rushing. You could be looking at a Falcons team that puts 5,000 rushing yards on the board this year. Not in one game. It's not going to happen in one game. But you're talking about a team that last season led the NAIA with just more than 3,000 yards rushing, on a pace to obliterate that this year. And if the Falcons are, I don't know what the timetable is for Coach Harrison, but let's just say for a moment that playoffs are on the table this year. This is what the Falcons are pushing toward. You would think so. I don't know. From where they were before, maybe this is a step ahead. I'm not sure, but I can tell you that they're on a pace to obliterate this. And if you give them more than 11 games to put rushing yards up, this is a team that could put 5,000 rushing yards there, and that would be interesting to see. Anyway, 500 rushing yards plus on the day there. Thanks, Jake, for pointing that one out. Falcons are rolling right now. Missouri Valley, 33-28 over William Penn, and Jeremiah Bryant, 23 carries for 184 yards rushing, 2 TDs as well for Missouri Valley. Ottawa, this one an upset over Bethel. Ottawa's first win of the season. They hold the Threshers 28-24, and where Ottawa had fallen behind and could rally enough to come back in its first 2 games, able to rally in this one, but not enough. And a miscue on the punt for Bethel late, or excuse me, it was enough this time. Miscue on the punt for Bethel late in the game. Ottawa follows up with a 40-yard pass, goes in for the score, and does rally in this one, but they weren't down 20 or 30 points this time. Down just 3. Get the touchdown, go ahead, 28-24. Malachi Peko, 9 carries, 41 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, including the game winner with 21 seconds left. Ottawa with the victory. Billy Maples, 17 for 27, passing 193 yards, 1 passing touchdown, no picks. Southwestern over Kansas Wesleyan. This was a big game because it matched up the 2 divisional preseason favorites in the KCAC this year, and Southwestern took care of business, hands down, 24-3 over Kansas Wesleyan, as the Coyotes fall to 1-2 on the season. The Mound Builders are 3-0 now on the year, and the defense held Kansas Wesleyan to 68 yards of total offense for the day. 57 passing yards, just 11 rushing yards. The Coyotes didn't score a touchdown, have just the 3 points on the board. For Southwestern, Andre Jones, 4 receptions, 50 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. St. Mary with a mild upset over McPherson, picks up the first win of the season for the Spires. 36-32. Raymond Webster, 22 carries, 157 yards rushing, and 1 rushing touchdown. Jackson Curtis had 14 tackles on the day, 1 interception, and forced a fumble as well for St. Mary. Louisiana Christian, 2-0 now, and just watch Louisiana Christian this season. I'm just telling you, keep a lookout for the Wildcats, Coach Maddox's squad. 2-0 now, 55-16 over Arkansas Baptist as the Buffaloes fall to 0-2. Sal Palermo III, 10 of 18 passing, just 143 yards passing. He didn't need to show out a lot. Had 4 passing touchdowns and no picks on the day. Devin Briscoe, 12 carries, 131 rushing yards, better than 10 yards a carry there, 2 rushing touchdowns. Again, the Wildcats not having to expend as much in this one as they get up early and then cruise to the 55-18 win. Bethany over Tabor. Now, you can go back and watch the show on Thursday, and even as we talked about the Kessinger division, Bethany was the only team in the Kessinger division that wasn't 2-0, that didn't have a win at all. And we mentioned this week that the Swedes had a 24-game losing streak as of last week. And I said, they're going to win a game this year. They're going to win a game this year, and who knows? Why not against Tabor? Why not? And sure enough, there it is, 28-17. Stopping that 24-game losing streak. 2 quarterbacks used throughout the night, and both of them found Michael Young for a touchdown pass. Young, 6 receptions, 178 yards receiving, and 3 receiving touchdowns. So we continue to look ahead. Couple more here that face NAIA squads. Texas Wesleyan goes to 2-0 on the year with a 65-10 victory over North American. And Texas Wesleyan on the day had a punt blocked return for a touchdown, a fumble recovery return for a touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown. By the way, that's Jason Price, and he got his first kickoff return for a touchdown. It will not be his last one this season. Watch that. Watch Jason Price for the Rams, and a safety as well. Carson Rogers, 26 of 37 passing, 306 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, and A.J. Bob, for the second week in a row, had 2 receiving touchdowns, 7 receptions, averaging more than 20 yards per catch, 147 yards. That's an even 21 yards per catch. Easy math there. Cumberland's 3-0 now on the year, wins its 5th straight in the series over Union, 10-7. Nate Hancock had at least 3 tackles, and I say at least 3 because I think some of the numbers are still yet to come in. And we see this sometimes with box scores just right after the fact. I think he may have had more, but he had the game-winning score in a 10-7 victory over Union. Nate Hancock with a 52-yard interception returned for a touchdown in the third quarter, and the pick 6 proves to be the winner. And finally, there were a number of teams in the NAIA. We're getting to the top 5 here in the NAIA that faced teams outside of the NAIA, whether it was Division III, but some in Division II and Division I. Now, there were a couple of those games that I'm sure folks would like to just leave behind and not think about anymore, considering that Quincy defeated Madonna 89-0. And I'm assuming it was the Crusaders and not just the aging pop star from the 80s. 89-0. But that is what was there. There were NAIA teams that showed up and showed out, including the number 1 team in the country, Northwestern, 27-24. The final in overtime as the Red Raiders travel to the state capitol there in Iowa and hold Division I Drake to just a field goal in overtime and go ahead and score a touchdown. It was tough and a challenge for the Red Raiders to come back, but as Coach McCarty said after the game, his team didn't flinch. They stayed true, stayed steady. A 90-yard drive in the closing minutes, capped by a 38-yard touchdown pass to Connor McQuillan, as he had a touchdown reception there with 43 seconds left. They get the 2-point conversion. It's tied, and then at 21, they hold Drake to a field goal, and then they go ahead and score a touchdown. Connor McQuillan, again, this time with a carry on 3rd and 1, 16 yards out. McQuillan goes in for the score. Northwestern defeats Drake. And so NAI superior over Division I. You want another Division I opponent to go down? We can do that for you. And we have a top 5 opponent as well. Indiana Wesleyan, 2-0 now on the season. Had a bye week before they took on Valparaiso. 24-22, the Wildcats hold on for the win as they were up in this one. The series was tied at 1 apiece. Indiana Wesleyan able to put points on the board and able to hold Valparaiso off as the Valparaiso scores with 7 seconds left to make it a 24-22 contest, and the Wildcat defense held, stopping the potential 2-point conversion. 24-22 the final. Xander Stokes, 13 of 33 on the day, 170 yards passing. You think maybe not that much, but they're able to come away, and Stokes connects for 3 touchdown passes on the day and 1 pick. Luke Bays had 12 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, and an interception as well. Big day for the Wildcats. One more over a Division II opponent, Arizona Christian. And this one in Durango, Colorado, not in Colorado, but as Arizona Christian travels, it's getting used to traveling in that part of the country too, as a Frontier game awaits next week. The Firestorm, 49, and Fort Lewis, 25. Fort Lewis College has seen better days on the football field, as that loss moves their streak to 29 straight games. By the way, the Swede streak is over, just in case you weren't following. Bethany no longer in the midst of a losing streak. Fort Lewis still is. Arizona Christian with 611 yards of total offense. Tyler Duncan, 22 for 32 passing on the day, 259 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks, 11 carries for 100 yards, 1 more rushing touchdown as well. And how about Cameron Tibbett? Second consecutive game in which Tibbett had 11 tackles for the Firestorm. So, all right, we have gone beyond the 5. Thanks for everyone sticking around. By the way, let me know from where you're watching, please. We appreciate that, as the channel is continuing to grow. And I have to tell you, I'm very, very thankful, and I appreciate each one of you for watching, and those of you who all have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, because it honestly does help, and it's encouraging too. So it's just one of those things that I appreciate if you have the opportunity to do that. To the top 5 we will go right now. And I mentioned one person trying to just take up residence there this season, and a couple of teams that we haven't talked about in a while make it onto our top 5. So we will reveal that top 5. There it is, right there. Top 5 performances for week 2. Let's start at the top, and we will go with Tyler Tenner for Roosevelt. The Lakers go to 1-1 on the season after having lost to North Central Division III champion last week. They beat Siena Heights 38-10. Tyler Tenner on the day, 34 carries. Did anyone else have a chance to play? Did the offense just go specifically through Tenner? 34 carries, 169 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He also had 2 receptions on the day for 9 yards, and one of those was an 8-yard touchdown catch. Tyler Tenner with 5 touchdowns on the day for Roosevelt. The Lakers now 1-1 on the year. Gerald Monroe for Graceland in our top 5 for the 3rd consecutive week. Now, I know he had to get there with Cade Ross, and we've had Cade Ross's name up there before. Ross, 21 of 35 passing for 290 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a couple of picks on the day as well. We gave this one to Monroe. But the big deal here, as we go through this, let me read this score to you. 37-35, Graceland over Benedictine in this one. Now, the Yellow Jackets are 3-0 on the season. This is a team that we talked about back in our preview back in August. We had the panel on Graceland, a team to watch, and they have shown themselves to be a team to watch. Benedictine falls to 1-2 now on the year. The loss to Morningside to open the season, and now lost to the Yellow Jackets 37-35, and it was an Alex Tuyo 44-yard field goal with 13 seconds left that proved to be the game winner in this one. Gerald Monroe, 10 catches, 197 yards receiving, 4 receiving touchdowns on the day. Again, Cade Ross threw those 4 touchdown passes, 297 or 90 yards passing, had 2 picks on the day as well. Let's look at Monroe's numbers too. Monroe now with 10 receiving touchdowns on the season. The record is 34, and that didn't happen that long ago. That was just 5 years ago when Connor Niles did it for Morningside. Of course, he was catching passes from Trent Solzma back then, the legendary Mustang quarterback. And I can say that, I know. The recency bias, by the way, is a real thing. When people talk about the greatest teams of all time, and they happened within the last 4 years. So Morningside, I think that it will prove out with 3 national championships in a 4-year stretch, and some of the numbers that were put up, it's going to prove out that Morningside is going to be one of those greatest teams ever. And by the way, it's still part of the Morningside era right now. They're still continuing to roll. I mean, this is a team that is putting up more and more and more regular season victories in a row. But that having been said, 34 is a number that's attainable at the pace that Cade Ross to Gerald Monroe is on right now. So that's a name you need to keep watching. Gerald Monroe, Cade Ross to Gerald Monroe, 10 touchdown passes on the season so far, 3 games in. And this is going to be also something like we talked about with Friends. Friends could, I know, it's a lot to think that Friends could put 5,000 yards up in a season. But if you give them enough games, I mean, if you go beyond the 11-game schedule and you give them a playoff game and maybe give them 2 or 3 playoffs games, just depending on how it rolls, a 20-team playoff field this year could happen. Same thing for Monroe. I mean, you give the Yellow Jackets 11 games. Well, 11 games, 3.3 touchdowns per game. That in and of itself is going to be 36.3 touchdowns, 37 touchdowns. That would do it. But if you give them an extra game or two, this Ross to Monroe connection could go well beyond that. So it's all about the math. It's all about the math. All right. This one, we don't see this very often, but we're going to do this one today. Mid-America Nazarene 45, Peru State 44. But you see up there Jordan Kemp from Peru State. So we're going to give a top 5 performance to someone on the team that lost. Doesn't happen very often. Total offense in this game, 1,107 yards between the two teams combined. The Pioneers put up 595 and the Bobcats put up 512. Adrian Parsons, 16 for 26 passing, 349 passing yards on the day, 4 passing touchdowns, 2 picks. Colin Shields, 28 of 52 passing on the day, 359 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks on the day. And you find your receivers there. How about Arlandis Mitchell for Mid-America Nazarene? 5 receptions, 178 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Tyler Floyd for the Bobcats, 7 receptions, 104 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. But we're going to give the top 5 performance to Jordan Kemp. Kemp on the day, 8 catches, 103 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. But he didn't just end it right there. He had not 1, but 2 83-yard punts, returns for touchdown. Both of them at 83 yards. And I was at a high school game this past Friday night in which I saw the home team get 2 punt returns for touchdowns. Haven't seen that in a single game in a while. And I would dare say the team I was watching hasn't had this happen in 30 plus years. However, I did see it. Didn't watch this one live, but it was the first thing I thought of. Not 1, but 2 punt return touchdowns for Kemp, and both of them for 83 yards. You're not going to see anything like that very often. Congratulations, Jordan Kemp. I know the Bobcats didn't get the win. I know they fall to 0-3 on the season, and 1 point, just 1 point coming up that short to Mid-America Nazarene. But a big day for Jordan Kemp and one he'll remember, and we wanted to recognize it here on Midwest Sportsnet. So a shout out to him. He made our top 5 performances. I don't know how you follow that. I mean, that's one of those things. Grandview, we'll try to follow it here. How about this? Grandview, 45, Missouri Baptist, 13. And for the Spartans, welcome to the Hart Conference, 0-3 on the season so far. They're going to pick up a win. Just not against Grandview. And Jackson Waring with our top 5 performers here. 20 for 29 passing, 409 passing yards on the day. Completed 69% of his passes as well. 5 touchdown passes, no picks on the day. Jackson Waring, who has stepped into that quarterback role, and he's doing a pretty fair job, I would say, for the Vikings this season. Grandview undefeated at 3-0. Damon Street, by the way, caught 5 of those passes for 133 yards. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. Seth Jewell, 7 catches on the day, 121 yards receiving, 1 receiving touchdown. Jackson Waring, though, our top 5 performance, 5 touchdowns thrown, no picks. And that leaves us with 1 more, and we go to Truman Julesgaard, the quarterback for the Baker Wildcats. 45-0. Baker just absolutely boat races Clark in this one. That's our first boat race reference, by the way, for 2023. Hope you enjoyed that. 2-0 on the season. The Wildcats are. Clark 0-3 on the season. And you look back, and we talked about this when we were previewing it this week. Last season, Clark won 20-19. It was an upset victory, to say the least. And granted, the Wildcats were down just a little bit last year. And I think I may have mentioned it. It's not as big of an upset because of the way the Wildcats played for the season. Still an upset. 20-19, Clark gets the victory. The head coach for the Clark Pride was one Coach Mike Regalado. He is now the head coach for the Baker Wildcats. He was there last year for that win. He was on the opposing side. I dare say there were a number of Wildcats that were on the losing side last year that remembered that game and said that would not happen again this season, and they made sure it did not happen again this season. Led by Truman Julesgaard, who was 15 for 21 passing, 297 passing yards, completed 71% of his passes, and threw 5 touchdown passes on the day, no interceptions. Oh, and he carried the ball as well. 9 rushes, 72 yards, 1 rushing touchdown for Truman Julesgaard. The Wildcats scored touchdowns on each of their first 5 possessions in this game. Rashawn Graves, 11 carries for 81 yards, and he also had 2 catches for 86 yards on the day. Big day for Rashawn Graves, 167 yards of all-purpose offense there, 1 receiving touchdown. Gavin Greenwood, 4 catches, 49 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns on the day. And how about Seth Simpson? We'll go ahead and talk about this. 6 for 6 PAT. That's not always automatic, but he was yesterday. 6 for 6 point after and had a 21-yard field goal as well. So Seth Simpson with 9 points on the day. But Truman Julesgaard, big day for him. A total of 369 yards of total offense on a big day for Baker. They blanked the Pride, 45-0. Truman Julesgaard, 71% completed and accounted for 6 touchdowns on the day. So that's a look at our top 5 performances following week 2. I hope that you enjoyed stopping by here today. Thanks for being a part of our broadcast, our live broadcast. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do. We would appreciate that. It does make a difference. And we're going to be back. We will preview week 3 a little bit later on in the week. I think we may get to talk a little volleyball on the channel as well. But I know most of you all are here to watch football, so we'll be talking about that later on. And one last thing, our Midwest Sports Saturday broadcast here on Midwest Sports Net, we talk about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. Our focus is Division II and NAIA, and we cover a lot of both of those affiliations. And we were at NAIA campuses the first 2 weeks of the regular season here, and we were at a Division II campus this past Saturday. We're going to be at a Division II campus again this coming Saturday as the Midwest Sports Saturday Tour continues. We will be in Edmond, Oklahoma, as the Missouri Western Griffins will come to town to take on the University of Central Oklahoma Broncos. We'll be there for that, and I'm not sure exactly when our coverage will start, but please watch, take a part, and be involved in that. And it's looking like it's setting up for a good night on September 23rd. We'll be back in the ranks of the NAIA on September 23rd. Be watching for that. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get a little bit closer to it on the week. Thanks for watching tonight. For everyone who commented tonight, Jeff, Jake, Dale, I really appreciate that. Please comment. Please let us know from where you watch these broadcasts as well. I'm very thankful for that, and I appreciate that. So we'll talk more NAIA football. Be looking for us on Thursday night. We will preview the 2023 Week 3 of NAIA football. Have a lot to talk about then. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.